Now it's time to prepare and paint your Chronograph's plastic parts. You can jump directly to each chapter by clicking on the times shown in the YouTube description. I used metallic copper, metallic silver, gloss black and metallic brass spray paints, although you can paint the parts any colours you wish. And you could use other types of paint. To check if your paint is suitable, I suggest you test it on the back of one of the parts before you proceed. Most of the plastic parts are made from acrylic, which is also known as perspex. We're not going to paint the backs of parts as they won't be seen. If painting a part goes wrong or dust spoils your painting, use the wet and dry abrasive paper on a waterproof surface to lightly sand off the problem areas so any blemishes are removed. Then wipe the part with a clean tissue or rag and vacuum off any dust. The part can then be repainted. We'll start with the copper coloured paint, although you can paint the different colours in any order. The first part is the pressure cylinder, followed by the copper coloured clock spring support. Find the pressure cylinder in your collection of parts and the clock spring support. Use the wet and dry abrasive paper to roughen up its surface to help the paint adhere. You don't have to do this now, but you can later use the wet and dry abrasive paper to prepare other parts in readiness for painting. I'd suggest resting the clock spring support on a piece of card that's sitting on some newspaper. This will protect the surrounding area from getting painted. Push the narrowed end of the wooden dowel into the pressure cylinder to support it whilst it's being painted. As always, I'd first suggest vacuuming off any dust. Whichever paint you're using, make sure you read and follow the instructions. If you're using spray paint, make sure you shake it for a minute after you hear the mixing balls start to rattle. I'd suggest spraying a light coat of paint from each side. Then, wearing the plastic glove, paint the pressure cylinder whilst rotating it. Don't apply too much paint as it will run. Several light coats are far better than a single heavy coat. Once you have painted the pressure cylinder, the wooden chronograph base provides a good way to support the pressure cylinder whilst the paint dries. Wait until the paint is dry. If necessary, apply a second coat of paint and leave it to dry. Now we can paint the silver ball chain pulley. Find the assembled pulley and use a vacuum cleaner to remove any dust. Then prepare your chosen paint. The pulley can be painted in any colour you choose, but I'd suggest silver. Follow the instructions provided with the paint. And, if you're using a spray paint, ensure you shake the container for a minute after you hear the mixing balls rattling around. Now, as last time, I'd suggest spray painting the pulley lightly from each side. We're not going to paint the backs of parts as they won't be seen. It should look like this. Wait for it to dry and then possibly apply a second coat of paint. Now to paint the laser cut clock spring. Remove it from the bag of laser cut parts. Vacuum off any dust and follow the instructions on your chosen paint. I'd suggest painting it black, but again you can choose any colour you'd prefer. If using spray paint, make sure as always you shake the container for a minute after you hear the mixing balls rattle. Then spray a light coat of paint from each side. It should look like this. After waiting for it to dry, you could always apply a second coat if necessary. Now to paint the chronograph clock spaces, pressure cylinder connector and minute hand support. Collect the 7 black spacers and the pressure cylinder connector from your collected parts and remove the minute hand support from the clock movement. Carefully remove the painted pressure cylinder from the wooden dowel. I'd suggest using some tissue paper or a soft rag, as the paint may not quite be dry and it's very easy to leave fingerprints in it. Push the pressure cylinder connector onto the tapered end of the dowel. Then, from the other end of the dowel, slide on the 7 black spacers. Finally, push on the minute hand support loose end first. This will keep the end you will later glue onto the minute hand free of paint. Vacuum off any dust. Follow the paint instructions. And if using a spray can, ensure you shake it for a minute after the mixing balls start to rattle. Wearing one of the plastic gloves, rotate the spacers as you paint them. Make sure you paint the end of the pressure cylinder connector. Then place the dowel into the chronograph's base and leave it to dry. Once the spacers and minute hand are dry, remove them from the dowel. Then you can finish painting the end of the pressure cylinder connector. Return it to the chronograph base while it dries. Now to paint the rest of the brass coloured parts. Find the clock movement and remove the brass nut and washer. Then wrap some masking tape or similar around the spindle. We need to stop the battery connectors from getting covered in paint. So stick some more masking tape or similar over the battery holder. Finally, collect together the parts that need to be painted to look like brass, starting with the clock movement. Now find your assembled pendulum top and bottom. The assembled side gear cut out. The assembled coiled copper pipe connector, the hour dial gear support, the rear chronograph gear cutout, and the front minutes cutout. the hours engraved cutout, and the small support gear. The large hour drive gear and the hour display gear. You'll need these 12 pieces. On a piece of cardboard, vacuum the rear chronograph cutout to remove any dust and place it on the card. Do the same for the front chronograph minute cutout. Then the hour gear. Make sure the side with the small engraved circle faces downwards. Then the hour indicator gear, the hour display support, the clock movement, the side gear cutout, the bottom of the pendulum, and the top of the pendulum. The hour support gear, the coiled copper pipe support, and the hour indicator. As always, read the instructions on the paint. If it's spray paint, ensure you shake it for a minute after you can hear the mixing balls rattling. If you're using spray paint, apply a thin coat from each side. Wait for the paint to dry, and if necessary, apply a second coat.